Hey, Lars Tribune here, reporting to you for the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series post-race podcast. I'm here with race director Clay Harper. We just wrapped up the second round of the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series races, and wow, what a killer event, Clay. You're blessed with really good weather. The vibe was off the hook, and I think for all intents and purposes, the event went down exceptionally well.
Yeah, Lars, I'd have to agree. It was a pretty good weekend for the weather, like you say. I think a lot of people have no idea how close we were. I mentioned it in the post-race press conference. I was in the war room with Mountain Creek Management looking at the storms. We were so close to a weather delay, which would have just been pure frustration. So narrowly avoided that. The rest of the weekend, the weather was beautiful. It was hot. I think people were maybe not expecting that much heat. So I know some people complained a little bit about it, but I thought it was great. I thought that the track turned out to be really dry. It was good, overall good. I think, to kind of just set it off, similar to the way we start our press conferences, right? So we had 338 racers. We had more than that registered, but 338 racing on the day. We had I think the largest group was our Cat 1 17-18 in the AMs, and the Pro Men was a little bit larger than that. So we're consistently seeing that the 17-18 men's group is rivaling the size of the Pro Men's group, which is crazy because the times are too. And then right off the back of that, we have the 15-16 men's group, which is also rivaling the size. I think that one was, I want to say like 4 or 5 riders less. I can't remember, but again, we're seeing times that are top 10 pro. It's really wild. And then we paid $15,500 in prize money, which was, another thing I take a lot of pride in, something that we work hard to do. It's actually $14,500 at the moment because I just got a text message from Cole Suetos that he washed his check in his pocket in the washing machine. He's requesting a new check. So I don't know. We'll have to review our policies and see if we're going to do that for him or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard of laundering money before, but that takes it to a new definition.
Yeah, well, I think that if you launder money on purpose, you probably have to be pretty smart. When you do it on accident, I don't know.
Check is in the mail.
Anyway, nothing but love for you, Cole. We'll get a new check in the mail.
So, event was amazing. One of the things that the riders especially were talking about all weekend was the course. You resurrected the U.S. Open course from 2017, but I'll tell you, it rode really different, even though the structure and the zones of the mountain that you used were similar. It really had a completely new flavor, and it rode quite different. But some of the sections were similar and feel like the wide open ski slopes at the bottom. Tons of positive comments on that. It really made for some fast racing, but there were also a lot of separators on the course. So, what kind of feedback did you get from the riders and from, just the folks that were on site about the course, and what were your thoughts overall on it?
Yeah, I was very happy with the track. I have to be honest. Myself and George Ryan, the trail daddy, the head trail builder at Mountain Creek, we went round and round on what track we were going to use, and then what sections we were going to use once we picked the track. So we actually have another track developed, which would have been a brand new track. And in the end, we just made the call to say, like, it's just too risky to run a completely new track on an event of this scale. So I think we'll see that next year. Maybe we'll do a fun race on it later this year. George and I kind of talked about that a little bit, but that track would have gone directly under the chairlift, maybe similar to the 2003, more similar to the 2003 U.S. Open, which I think would have been wild. But that's neither here nor there. We elected to go with that 2017 layout because it just provided a race in 2017 that we knew would be solid. But we had a few points, like a few things we knew we needed to change to improve the race. The first was the location of the pipe crossing after you come across the first section of woods. And that pipe crossing in 2017, anybody who raced it is probably like having PTSD right now when I talk about it, because no matter how dry the mountain got, that pipe crossing went into a mud pit. There was a spring there. And so, well, it's actually debatable if it was a spring or a leak in the snowmaking system, but whatever it was always mud. So we swapped that out for a different exit, which put us lower down the ski slope. We skipped infamous 99 section, which had really become kind of like a bowling alley with one lane. So that I was happy to avoid that section this year. I think that needs to be reworked, and it just wasn't in the plans for George to be able to do that. So instead, we wind up with this wide open ski slope section that was just, I mean, it was granite. It was rough. When you watch the race coverage show on YouTube, it's probably my favorite shot from everybody's run is watching them come out of that woods, past the SR Suntour hole shot, and just bombing down into the ski slope. There was this step down there that I was nervous somebody was going to try to pull and get hurt. George assured me that it was so big, no one would attempt it. I think if we continue to run this track for future years, someone may prove us wrong, but it was really cool. And then you come down and into a new version of Asylum. That was a personal choice on my part. I'm just a little tired of running the original Asylum Rock Garden. You know, we changed it up in 2017 and we just changed it up again. That section has become, in my opinion, just a little bit played, so to speak. So potentially we could come back again and add more to that section and go back to the original Asylum. But again, it would just take a ton of resources from the mountain. And we brought back that big US Open jump, the best whip jump, which made people really happy. I think that it was running great all weekend, despite a little bit of weather and a wet lip the first day. The guys got out there and they tarped it. They saved that lip, which is ironically similar to what we had to do in 2017. And then the whoop section was turned a little bit. That was a little different, but not a big deal. But right after that was what I would say was the most pivotal section in the entire track, which was, we call it crapshoot. If you really know the mountain, you know it's like an offshoot of crapshoot. It's not the original crapshoot trail there, but it was a brand new drop out of that section that we built for this track, and it was rowdy. We found that rocks were, as it developed, rocks were coming out of it and claiming wheels, and we did a few minor adjustments to it throughout the weekend. I think it ran great in the end, but I think it was pretty much like the focal point of every athlete. Like that was the thing that they probably were stressed about the most. Then down through the new frog pond section, which worked well. We had to insert a go around at the last minute because that section proved to be a little too hard for the full slate of amateur categories. And then another big change that I was very, very stoked on was we fully eliminated 2 turns from the 2017 layout at the end to the 2024 layout. And that made a way faster finish. We were able to double the size of the finish jump, and athletes came in with a lot more speed and a lot less pedaling. So it really worked well. It broke down nicely. We talk about that in the pod or in the press conference a little bit too. I think athletes who have raced World Cups and other larger races were very excited that it broke down similar. Like berms blew out, holes developed. It kind of separated, those who can rip a perfectly manicured track to those who can win on a blown out track, which was good. And if we run this track again next year, I think we're going to see it go really deep in the red with things blown out. I mean, you race and ride moto your whole life. You still do. What did you think of the moto ruts on that track? I can't even think of anything else to call them but moto ruts.
Oh, those full moto ruts, 10, 12 wide. I told you on the morning of Sunday morning that I actually stopped to take a picture of them because I was so giddy about it. That's one of the things I loved about this course. I mean, the whoops, the jumps, the moto ruts, it broke down really well. It got really fast, but there were still separators. I know you talked about in the previous podcast that the love of keeping racing tight. As a former rider, I always tended to like the courses that had separators. It doesn't make for as exciting of a finish, but it definitely rewards people that are willing.
But if it's your advantage, it's your advantage.
Exactly. So it rewards people that are willing to, roll the dice just a little bit more or take the chance. But I thought the track was really cool, and it was really cool just to see how different riders interpreted it differently and rode it differently. And I think some of that translated to where they finished on the day.
I think that there was probably more separation from the track, we'll say track-induced separation of riders in the amateur categories than the pro. I think that in the pro categories, at least the pro men for sure, I don't think the track really separated, people as much as the other categories. I think that by the end, everybody was just able to navigate that track at a very high speed, which is why we saw those close times at the end.
Yeah, I would agree, with maybe the exception of one or two sections and lines that one or two riders took that clearly made a difference. What comes to mind for me is Ace's line, bunny hopping over said moto ruts, right? Right at the end of Froggy Style. He bunny hopped over the ruts and he took that way tighter to the inside than almost everybody else. We saw a lot of the top pros bunny hopping that soft spot because not only were they axle deep ruts, but it was soft. So people lost a lot of momentum there, and it was right before a critical sprint. So, 1 mile an hour, you're not making that up no matter how hard you sprint. 1 mile an hour of exit speed coming out of that. So, I think, with the exception of just a few parts of the course, and also right before the drops, Asa came in just on fire. You can see it in the race replay. I mean, the clouds of dust right before he hit that step down. It was just impressive. But I think you're right. For the pro class, everyone's running it so fast, so I don't think the course necessarily separated the riders. What it did was the riders separated the riders. It was ultimately their decisions and which lines they chose that separated them, because it's really difficult, assessing it. You go with what feels good and what you think in your gut feels the best. And you can try to pace another rider in practice, or you can try to review GoPro footage and kind of compare notes, but it's really tough to make that determination with the utmost of accuracy on which is the best line. And I think Asa just made a couple decisions that worked out for him. So
Yeah, and somehow we all know he can also ride the same line as other people faster, right? So, but something I wanted to talk about, which you kind of segued into there, was this track has to work for amateurs and pros, which I don't think that people really know what it takes to build a track that satisfies both levels. And we started that mission with the U.S. Open, and we carried it into this national series. It makes operations better, and it all not having to light up two different tracks and go back and forth and staff them. And to be perfectly honest with you, dollars and cents. When we come to a bike park, that bike park needs to be able to still sell tickets and make revenue. And the more of the bike park we take for a race, the harder of a decision it is for them to want to have the race there as a venue. And so there's a million reasons why, but so we're on one track, all the categories. And I kind of wanted to talk about how I think it's important to talk about that, so people know, like, if you're listening to this and you're going to do Monster Energy Pro downhill and Big Bear and you've never done it before, it's one track. We may get into a situation someday where we have two tracks if the layout calls for it, but right now that's the goal, and it does allow people to compare themselves. So those ruts, oddly enough, I think because we made go arounds on the hard stuff, the crapshoot drop and the big doubles and stuff, but there's no go around on those ruts. And when I saw kids, I mean, there's kids on 24-inch wheels in this race. I don't know how they made it through those ruts. That had to be nearly impossible. They're 12-inch deep ruts on a 24-inch bike. So it was really kind of odd to me. I wasn't expecting that to be something that would get to the point where that became people's like hardship, if you will, amateurs' hardship on the track. And it claimed experts too. I mean, my son, 15, 16, Cat 1, blew his foot off the pedal in that rut coming out of Froggy Style because it just kind of hit it funny. I think he got cross-rutted or something and blew his foot out. And he wasn't the only one. It happened to a bunch of people. So to me, that's incredible, right? Like, if we can design a track that evolves throughout the weekend to the point where it creates a new challenge that can separate riders, that's cool. That keeps people on their feet. That keeps people having to do track walk and really pay attention. They can't set it and forget it. And that to me is like a whole new element in racing. That's pretty cool.
yeah. Speaking of riders, let's talk about some of the performances. Let's talk about some of these results. Do you want to start with the pro men?
Yeah, let's jump right in with the pro men. I mean, might as well work our way backwards.
Pretty exciting. I mean, we saw an entirely new podium, first through third, all new riders. Definitely going to make things interesting for the points race. 7 of the top 10 right now in the point series have completed both events. I think some of the only exceptions are Dakota, Asa, and Austin. They were only able to hit one event due to the World Cup schedules. And well, at least for Austin and Dakota, Asa was out with an injury for the first one. As we all know, we heard about, his success in both Ireland and Poland. I mean, he's on fire. He's running basically a perfect season right now. Backed it up with this Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series #2 win. What were some standout moments for you with the Pro Downhill final?
I keep talking about this guy for crazy reasons. Not only did he forget that he had his prize money in his pocket after the race, Cole Suetos coming across the line was probably, for me, the highlight of the pro men's race. I mean, he came across that line, and immediately I was standing right there, and the first thing he says was like, I don't know how I survived that. And I'm like, wow, that's got to have a story behind it, right? And I guess that he was just loose.
Cole, let's hear a little bit about your run.
We almost crashed like 10 times. She's loose out there. But good run. I'm stoked.
Like a tight, loose type of run, obviously, because he never hit the deck and laid down a pretty good time. I got the results up here on my other screen here. I wanted to actually look and see. Because, he was about, he's a little under a second ahead of Lucas, taking him out of the hot seat at the time, which was cool because, Lucas got to spend some time in that hot seat for let's talk about that, right? So that's Lucas's first pro race. He just jumped from 17-18 to pro here in the US. But oddly enough, he gave up his points lead in the 17-18 for the Pro Downhill Series, moved up into the pro category, and immediately proceeded to command the hot seat for much of the race, right? I mean, you spent a ton of time talking to him. You guys almost ran out of things to talk about.
Yeah, it was so cool to see. I've been following him for a long time. His father raced back in the day, so I've known his father for the better part of 2.5 decades, and they've been really pretty committed individuals, like pretty committed family on the East Coast race scene for sure, for many years. So it's just really cool to see him say, I'm ready, and what a cool place to do it. It's kind of home turf for him. He doesn't live too far away. We talked a little bit about that in a pre-race podcast. Coming in from Long Island, New York, it's just I would call Mountain Creek his home mountain. And I think he came in with a lot of confidence. He had some good guidance through the weekend, and he was hungry. So I think everyone believed he could do it. It was just really cool to see him actually do it, and to be literally less than a second, literally almost exactly half a second off of a third is really cool. So that was definitely exciting to me.
Yeah. And that race, that was a race within a race, I think, up to Cole, right? Like it could have been, it was almost like that was a race to the point where Cole came in and took him off the hot seat, and the level of excitement from Cole with that run, and Lucas relinquishing the hot seat, and just like the camaraderie between those guys and the moment in the corral. Like that's what we build, right? Like, if you haven't been to one of these events, that's what we work towards. That's what you and Matt Murray on the mic build towards. Our timers, this things. I actually forgot to talk about this in the beginning, this new start list format that we've gone to, which is really exciting to me, where we're building in specific breaks, we're building in rerun periods, all to create a path to the moment where the top couple riders can battle and see if they can unseat the person in the hot seat with the crowd around. And that was fantastic. And it was almost like that could have been the end of the race. And then Asa came down. And so, that kind of was a whole nother just level of time gap, right? So he jumped it from what do we have, 2:15 up to a 2:11. That was a pretty big dent to put into the competition, which, as we've seen in recent weeks, I guess we've come to expect that from Asa. The world has come to expect that from Asa. I don't think the other athletes were terribly surprised. I think when they all finished their run and put their time up on the board, they were probably just sitting back, just waiting to see what happens. What's Asa going to do, And so Asa comes down, takes the hot seat, and he's a cool cucumber, right? He's like, yep, that's sick. Little celebration, nothing too much. And then the pressure was on, and Dante rolling out, last man out of the start house, and we were all on pins and needles. And I thought he was going to be able to do it, to be honest with you, based off how good he was looking and just his overall confidence in the weekend. He definitely was very confident on the track and looked great every time I saw him in practice. But I don't remember, maybe you do because you watched the split so closely, which split I'm trying to see in the results here. There was just like a definitive moment where it dropped back. And I want to say it was I think it was at the end of it was the second split. So he was up at the first split and then dropped back at the second split, which was, a little bit of an early climactic moment, but it was good. He came down and crossed that finish line, and it was still good. People on the edge of their seats to see Asa win, even if he's already sitting in the hot seat. But what did you think of the way that at the end of that? I thought that it played out very well. I thought that it was somewhat predictable, but not overly predictable. I don't know between Cole and Lucas and Tristan. I think it would almost be a coin toss between those three for third place on any day if they're all feeling good. And then the Dante versus Asa battle, it was good. I was very happy. I thought it was great. And we talked about this earlier, the difference between where we are with the amateur categories versus where we are with the pro categories for a consistent appearance amongst the pros. And we didn't have all the same pros we had at the first race. And we know, let's be honest, we're building a new series here in the US, North American series. We want to see these athletes commit and be able to race the whole series at a professional level. And we're seeing at the amateur level, the high level amateurs, which will be the pros very shortly. And at the pro level, we know these guys have contracts that require them to be in Europe, training camps with their teams and all this stuff. And we're breaking that mold a little, but it's not wildly surprising to me that we didn't have a lot of the same guys from the first race. So it left a weird kind of situation in the points, right? So let's just talk about that, because we've been talking about the results. But, when we look at the points for this, Dante slides into the lead, which is great in my opinion, considering that he is the highest ranked that's done both events. Asa missed the first event. I think Asa could be easily in the lead if he had been at that first event. Because, he may have potentially had back-to-back wins. Who knows? But Cole slotted into second and Dylan Conti into third in the overall points, whereas Dylan finished 10th on the day, right? So the consistency of showing up at these races, it matters in the points chase. And I think that we have a really good points chase now. And it's funny, like what you indicated. So looking at this, right, like we have Dakota and Asa there. They're back in 5th and 6th. They're tied for 5th, actually, I guess you would say. And they would have a hard time catching up to win the series at this point. Whereas like Dante, Cole, Dylan Conti, Jack Pedersen, Julian Markowitz, Austin Dooley, he only came to 1-2. Jake Kahn. I think that we're going to see some of these athletes as we move forward into the next round really start to be able to walk away with it. And that's it is what it is of the first year, whereas in the women's pro class, which we should switch over to, it's not quite the case because we have much more consistent appearances, right?
Yeah. The women's race was extremely exciting. The men going down to that final two, the air was electric because Dante did have the fastest first split. I know we're going to talk about the SR Sun Tour Hole Shot Award, but he did have the fastest first split. And and he was the fastest qualifier, let's face it. So we all kind of had expectations he was capable of taking the win. Asa just pieced together one incredible run. And yeah, you did mention some of the time gaps with the top couple riders. I don't think that's uncommon. But man, once you go back to between like 8th and 20th, there's less than 3 seconds that separate all those riders. So it starts to get really tight. And that's really
the low 220.
Yeah. Yep. Right around that 220 mark.
Yeah. We had a whole bunch of riders in that
Exactly.
range, which was really cool. Yeah.
Exactly. And those are a lot of those guys. I mean, like we just pointed out, 7 of the top 10 right now in the series have hit both. But that next group of guys at like 8th through 20th place or top really 30, there's a lot of riders hitting both, and those guys are actually going to have a good run in the series. And I think for a lot of these folks, they might just be gunning for a numerical goal, like trying to finish top 10 in the series, because that carries a lot of cred. And I think it'll be something that's really noteworthy for them to bring back to their sponsors, because it's difficult, to just say, I want to be the series winner. There's only one of those, right? So that means everybody else that lines up and waits for the beeps to go, they're not going to have that. So I think there's going to be a lot of people fighting back there. And the women, I mean, same there. 6 of the top 10 women hit both races. We know that Frida Ronning and Abby Ranka and Taylor Ostgaard, they're all over in Europe for the World Cups. So they all missed round 2, and they were all in that top 5 in round 1. But with Allie and Eris, that battle is exciting. I think they're both pretty hungry. And Allie's going into round 3 with I think a 2-point advantage. I'm not looking at the point series right now, but I believe she's got
2 points. So I'll read it down. So we have Aletha's in at 96 points, and Eris is in at 94, and McKenna with 82, Rachel Pagel with 81. So it's like that group it's anybody's championship still. And just to take a break from highlighting that, because we should talk about the battle between those 2 girls at the top, but it's something that I told you I wanted to bring up on this podcast, and I think it's a great time to insert it, is that there is the reasons people would chase this point series, right? And so we don't, and down to the amateurs, we don't have a lot of accolades for people to achieve in our sport outside of World Cup wins and the US Open for high-level accolades. So we're trying to create an accolade where you're the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series champion. That takes commitment. That takes showing up multiple races, different parts of the country, and performing. Wildly different tracks too, right? Like when you compare Killington to Big Bear, it's going to be night and day. And so there's that. But what we haven't really talked about, and this is just, again, trying to be transparent and honest, there's some prize money on the line. We haven't released what the series championship for the pro men and women is going to pay out. And to be perfectly honest, that's just simply a result of the year we're having, the type of economy we're having. And this is a brand new series. It's a huge undertaking by me and my team and you, and the investment in it it's large. And we did have, a lot of very late sponsorship partners, event partnership deals. Obviously we have like Monster, Continental, Fox, are big partners in it, making the foundation of this thing possible, making sure that these races happen. But as far as the overall prize purse, we're still not quite able to establish exactly what that's going to look like, but it's going to be, minimum, a couple $1,000s on top of the regular prize money for the series championship. So, what was Dante's quote in the press conference?
And I mean, honestly, we can all say it, but the money's pretty good. So we're all chasing that bag. And I mean, the track's good and the vibes are just super cool at these races. So,
we want to live up to that standard. And anybody who knows me knows, damn, I want to put money in athletes' hands. I want to build rock stars. And it's just going to take me and my team some time to do it. So I hope everybody can be patient with us. I also think it's a good year for us to be doing it this way, given the conversation you and I just had a few minutes ago about we're not getting the buy-in from a lot of these top teams just based purely off the commitments that they have. This thing gets announced in December. Many of these teams are already, their commitments are locked. So, Dakota Norton, like I could say, my feelings are hurt. Dakota didn't come back to the second race, but the reality is Dakota's making a living racing, and he has partnerships and he has sponsors and he has commitments in places he needs to be. And this series is too new for that to be at the top of his his team's list, and his team's based out of Europe. So like it makes perfect sense. So it's created a very I don't know what the word to use, unsteady or just a very topsy-turvy points chase. And then we're going to announce shortly some money on top of it. And I think that these guys that committed to the series, who the people we're just talking about, Cole, Dylan, Jack, that group, and Dante, they're going to reap the benefit of showing up. So we appreciate it, and we understand, where everyone stands with it. And 2025 is already like well within our sights and our planning. So it's just 2024 is a wild year. That's all I can say. So
yeah, I mean, managing the schedule is never easy. You've talked about that even when you were just promoting one massive major event with the U.S. Open of mountain biking. Even finding the date for that one event to fall, I know, created challenges for you. And now you're trying to find dates for an entire series to fall. And no question, you're always keeping the athletes in mind. Proof, paychecks, payouts. You heard it from Dante. You've been doing it since the inception of the U.S. Open. You got top talent from all over the world flying in for that because the paychecks were huge. Prize money was big. It's prestigious. It brings in names. This will be no different. But I think as we start talking about the other categories, I know we're still kind of talking about, the pro class, but as we start talking about the other categories, you did share that part of your vision, part of what's driving you to be successful with this race series is to create a platform for the future talent. And you look at some of these other classes. I mean, some of the biggest classes, 18 of the top 20 kids in the points chase in the Cat 1, 15, 16, they're at both races so far. Everyone in the top 10 in the Cat 1, 17, 18 did both races so far. All 10 of the top 10, right? So like you are creating a platform for this.
they're the people I go to work for, Lars.
That's it. So, you've got a few riders, the ones that are memorable, right? Top World Cup riders that can't make every event, but the masses, they're doing it.
Yeah. And I've been pretty honest with everybody. I mean, my goal is to build a platform where these kids who are 13, 14, 15, 16, they may be able to have careers in this series. It's going to take time. We're not claiming anything
Yeah,
yet.
I can't wait to talk about some of these kids because, we obviously know the names of these established pros, that both the men and women's fields. But there's some really fast youth. Even some of our pros are pretty darn young, let's face it. But look at the women's pro podium.
Yeah, I think that it's funny. We skipped out of the women's pro, and you're hitting the transition. We need to talk about the amateurs, but hey, the top two steps of the women's pro podium were pretty damn young as well. So like, I guess let's just kind of finish that before we jump over to the full AMs.
Absolutely.
The press conference was the first of all, the celebration in the corral for Aletha and Eris was almost like I was almost struggling to understand the situation. I'm like, are they friends? Are they not? I can't tell. Cause like, I want to see competition, right? Like we want to see people want to win. And she comes across the line and the first thing she says is, I think it was, I finally beat that girl. I beat that girl. It was something like that. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Like there's some like, some passion behind this. And then she turns around and they're hugging each other. And I'm like, all right, well, that's sick. I mean, I guess that they can leave it on the court, if you will. So like, I think that we have bred like a very healthy competition between them. That's awesome. I love to see it. And even right into the press conference when they're chatting with each other, and it's cool. I think that as time goes on, we'll see how that develops, right? Like, they're very close in points right now. I think that makes it easier to be friends, but we'll see, how that whole the next two races develops in the women's category. And like you said, we have, 5 racers, both have, put up 2 results, both they're really close. So I don't think anybody could pick, could call it who's going to win that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely too early to tell. We saw, Allie came out of the gate swinging. She took the Whole Shot Award, the SR Sun Tour Whole Shot Award in the finals. Eris just she was powerful. She just put down a really strong run from top to bottom, but really she just turned it on. She started to get wound up and just hit her lines, made the marks, laid down a lot of power in the sprint, and I think it was just enough. And when you look at the race replay, you could see Allie came out swinging, and I think she realized just how loose she was riding, and she kind of had to reel it in a little bit. And Eris was giving nothing to Allie, she kind of made a conscious decision to go for a finish, to the best she could, the fastest she could, but within that limit of keeping it clean. And I think Eris just had the golden light shine down, and she was feeling it, so she went with it and just threw it down. So it was pretty cool to see. And I think you're right, like that camaraderie they have, it is really cool. They're really a tremendous amount of mutual respect between riders and the talent that they have. And they kind of seem to share in the fun and each other's wins, right? So they just seem kind of mature beyond their years already, the way they interact with one another.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's also, I think that like there's a difference, in many sports, including, World Cup mountain biking, between women at the top of the sport and how they interact with each other versus men at the top of the sport and how they interact with each other, which is probably a great transition into the 17, 18 men's category. I'm going to say that was the moment of the race. When excuse me, when Jack Zanoni came down, and unseated Max Abrams, that was, for so many reasons, that was the moment of the race for me. Why don't you were calling the shots. Why don't you give your, take on that one?
I'm a fan of Jack's because I know him. He's local. He's New Jersey. He's a New Jersey rider. And I know he's been going fast. So it was really cool seeing him connect the run. And I mean, he threw down a 2:18, which would have put him just outside the top 5, literally in 6th place in the pro class, like a really, really respectable time. I mean, he was a second and a half off Lucas Dodora, who just bumped up. So he's close. And the energy he had at the end, such a good kid, such a cool family. They've created their ZFR factory racing program. It's Jack and Tyler and Victoria and the 3 siblings. It's kind of like New Jersey's version of the Atherton scene there, 2 boys and a girl. It's pretty cool.
What a description. I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because you don't see that. They train together, they ride together, they pull for one another. It's cool. It's a really cool little family thing that they've got going on.
They really do. And I end up speaking with their mother a whole bunch about it too, right? Like, she asked me a ton of questions. What can we do to help with the series? What type of commitments do you need from us? One of the things is they went out and spent a bunch of money on a pit setup. They want to make, their team look factory, which makes the whole race and pit setup look better. And then content, hey, what can we do content wise that'll dovetail into what you're doing and everything like that. And it's funny because one of the things that I talked about was how we need characters, which is why we're doing this press conference. It's why we're highlighting juniors. It's why we're trying to have more opportunity for people to get to know these racers. Even though we don't have full televised broadcasts or anything like that yet, we're creating these YouTube shows and it's just the beginning. But man, Jack understood the assignment. Like that kid, he's like, well, if I'm really fast and I win a race, I get a stage and I can act like I want to. And it was awesome. Like, I think that this contrasts which is why I said it was funny earlier, this contrasts the pro women win, because I've known Max Abrams a long time. I'm a huge fan of Max Abrams. I think that the one thing I'll say about that kid is he has developed into an unbelievably powerful rider. Like, he just I see him and he looks like a professional athlete. He's so well put together. He's in such great shape and he's fast as hell. And he wanted that win badly. And he was in that hot seat. And there was a ton, I'll preface it with this. There was a ton of mutual respect between Max and Jack. No one was a jerk. It was good, but there was no hugs. And it was like, okay, noted. I'll see you at the next race. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was like a nod and he walked off that hot seat and like there was ice water running through Max's veins. And I was like, hell yeah. Like I could respect that so much. He didn't try to act like he was, so happy Jack won. He wanted that damn win. But he wasn't rude to Jack or anything at all. And I'm sure he mutually respects him. And they're both great kids. Like we don't have any kids in this race that I wouldn't go to bat for. But that's what we need. We need that drive and that desire to win this series that those two kids have. And I'm freaking stoked. Like I love watching it. And I hope Max comes back next week, next race in August, swinging even harder. So
yeah, and there's no question.
It was cool. It was definitely the moment of the race for me.
Yeah, and there's no question that they will. I mean, there's a lot of talent, and we talked a little bit about that on our last post and pre-race podcast. Just how fast this class is. I mean, the four of the top four in Cat 1, 17, 18, all would have been top 10 in pro class. So, again, we talked a little bit about that.
Totally. Yeah.
They're already putting down top 10 pro times. So
I think we should talk about third place too, right? Like, so, Drake Parker, Outlaw MTB, Outlaw Tribe, Utah kid, another just shredder from birth. I've watched this kid grow up for years. In Tyson's program, this Outlaw MTB program just breeds kids that rip. And he's back from a big injury. I didn't even know he was coming. And he looked great on track all week. Easily could have been a pick for the win. Right there in the mix, with a 220.18, right there. He could be on top of the box next time. You know what I mean? Like I would say everybody up to 10th place, Matthew Spain was ripping all these kids. There were so many kids that just absolutely could put the run together and beat Jack or beat Max. It's kind of like, when you watch Supercross, it's like when you watch Supercross and it's like the difference between a category where you're like, oh, is Jack going to win? Or, oh man, like there could be a lot of different kids standing on top of the box, which makes the 17-18 category so exciting. It's why we expanded our coverage. We didn't have the budget or the plan to include coverage of the juniors. But working with Gravity Cooperative and Michael McQueen, Mangler, like we can't ignore this. It's so good. This racing is so good.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so many good riders. Colin Bork is another one. He was 7th on the day with a 223. He came down with a flat tire. So just, and
Crazy.
William and McClure and Loic, rounding out like 6th through 4th, like just they're all going so fast. It's really cool to see,
Let's talk about one 17-18 athlete that unfortunately we did not get to see in the finals, who would have 100% been my pick for the win prior to the race based on how bad he wanted it and how much he practices on his home mountain. And that's Colton Hubbard. Right? Like that kid, what a heartbreak. He was on fire in practice. So I was on the track. We opened practice Friday morning, very first lap. I'm standing at Crapshoot. No one has ridden this thing yet. It hasn't even been, it's just been rolled in testing. Very first lap, does the full gap and throws a table on it, like pulls the bars up and throws a tabletop. And I'm just like, what did I just see? Like, I couldn't believe it. I actually was like, I said to, I think Alvaro was with me, and I was like, man, that's insane. Maybe he should dial it back a little, but he rode consistently with that throughout the whole next 3 days, same pace. He was just flying. He had a very unfortunate crash. I think it might be up in his Instagram, Colt Hubbard 1. If you check it out, I think he put it up there. He had a very unfortunate like exit of the whoops where his tire just got kicked. And again, this is why we put whoops in the track, right? Like it can get wild. And like he came through whoops, got a little bit of a bad bounce, just like a dirt bike, if you will, and came out just like a couple inches to the right of where his line was, and just tagged this tree with the back of his bike. It spun him around, and he wound up with a pretty good ankle injury. He went and broke the beam for seating that later that day, and thought he was going to come back on Sunday, but just wasn't able to. So super unfortunate. I really hope that he's healthy by Big Bear, because I know that kid very well, and I'm a huge fan, and I think that he's got what it takes. So we'll see if he's back for that event. If not, he'll come to the U.S. Open with just a pure winner take all mentality. Like he will absolutely screw up the points race in U.S. Open if he doesn't get to Big Bear first.
Yeah, Colton is not only an incredible athlete, but a hardworking kid. I know he was busting his butt at Rock Creek till like 11 o'clock at night, hanging signage. And I got to say, when we were doing course walk up at Mountain Creek at this round 2, we were in the asylum section, and the entire pro class was sitting there dissecting the different lines. And Colton was like the epicenter of like lore. Everyone was talking about how fast he rode that section in the mud, how he did it 4 times in a row, and he had them all sitting there reconsidering the lines that they thought they were going to take because of just how on point he was. So you're absolutely right.
The rock, I believe they call it the Colt Hubbard line.
Sending it off that diving board.
Yeah, I think George Ryan wound up owning that line in the end when he fully gapped out to the downside of the next mound. But yes, and also huge shout out to Colton Hubbard, Zach Harper, Kai Burleson, and Cash Shaleen. Those kids are all super fast, expert level racers that all put in a lot of hours to make this race happen. Like people don't understand how much goes into setting this track up and down the mountain, putting out the course markings, trimming back some branches, doing all this stuff, and then the cleanup. And those 4 kids put in so much work. I just, huge gratitude to all 4 of those kids. Great kids. And when you're able to put down like work, when you have the ethic to do work, and then you also can go and whoop ass on the racetrack, to me, like those kids rank very high to me. Like that's just really cool. Like, like you said earlier in the podcast, there can only be one winner in every race, right? And nobody can win every race. But like the thing, with all this juniors talk and all the stuff we're doing with juniors, and having a son who races Cat 1, 15, 16, like I see it, like the life skills and like what these kids develop, like learning how to train for competition and mentally prepare and then show up and perform on that day. But then also be able to not ignore normal tasks like working, helping, things like that, everything. It's pretty cool. Like I don't know. I'm in awe of the way they did that. I don't know if I would have been able to do that at their age. So
it's, I think, probably the work ethic that they invest to master their craft of riding a bicycle. It just transcends to other areas. So that would be my guess. I don't see what their home life is like.
Totally.
I can see how they present themselves and carry themselves at the mountain, and they're definitely hardworking, polite, professional, and just, happy dudes.
I was just going to say, at the same time, those kids can talk some shit to each other, which is awesome too. So they're not like, let's not paint the picture that they're like goody two shoes. These kids race hard. And they talk shit to each other, whether they're on the track or they're working side by side, helping me set up the track. And that's just, it's awesome. So yeah, let's jump over and talk about the 15, 16 Cat 1, another great category, probably, the category that has the best points chase of the entire series at this moment.
We've got a tie for first between Alex Mallon and Cohen Bundy. We've got a tie for second in the series between Nick Frazier and Cash Shaleen. And then we've got another tie for third between Luke Mallon, Alex's twin brother, and Chris Liebig. So this points chase is...
The reality is that there's, and sorry, I'm trying to scroll through these results. There we go. The results, Arthur, our timer, put them in a weird order here. So
yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah. So the points chase versus the race itself, right? So you're talking about the points chase, which is, it's just awesome. Like this is what we're here for. 91, 91, 90, 90, 79, 79. Like those are the top 6 kids, 3 ties. I don't know how, I don't know how I would have never wrote that story. I didn't know we were going to come to this, and I'm really excited about it. And then when you look at the kids that are up there, I mean, you got Cash tied for second. That's the kid that, if you heard the podcast or the press conference, that's the kid that the pros are talking about, looking at his time. He's in second, tied. So like, where are we going with this? This points chase is going to get crazy. And then the race on the day was incredible. Alex, I know that win meant a lot to him. He was really intent on getting this win. Another great kid, good family, outlaw program. They've been around a long time. But like 0.3 off his time is Nick Frazier, a kid who's come over from motocross and just, what is it, his first year racing, I think, maybe second, and just putting up numbers. The kid gets it. He has speed control, and he gets it. Cash, Shalene in third. Cash broke his chain, a third of the way into the course, shortly after the whole shot split. And then Luke Mallon, Cohen Bundy. I'm pretty sure Cohen Bundy put down a top 5 or 10 pro time at Rock Creek. So like, these kids are heavy hitters. I think that you can be pretty proud of yourself if you're in the top 10 in points in the Cat 1 15-16 in this series.
So you're talking about how their times compare to the pro class. When you look at the top 5 at Mountain Creek this past weekend, they'd all been within the top 7 of the pro class. And Alex ran a 2:16. I mean, that would have put him literally in 5th place, right behind. Well, let's see. Let's do a little math here. We've got Lucas ran a 2:16.111. Alex ran a 2:16.110. So Alex would have taken 4th place in pro men's by 1/1000th of a second over Lucas Dedura. Just incredible, 2:16.1 for Alex, 2:16.4 for Nick, 2:17.1 for Shalene with no chain on the bottom half, and then both Luke Mallon and Cohen Bundy with 2:19s. It's, again, this is our 15 and 16-year-old category, right? They're going to be knocking on the door in a pro class anytime. And I'd be surprised if we didn't see more of these young guns bump up before the end of the season. It'll be interesting to see if anyone else follows Lucas Dedura's lead. We shall see.
Yeah, I think that that's, I'll say this. I would recommend to these kids not to do that, because at this point in the game, if this year, this is the first year of this series, if you're a 15-16, you can't, your bump up on the States doesn't change your bump up here in the US doesn't change your status around the world with UCI racing. You have so much time out ahead of you. You're too late for the points chase for pros. And you could be the 15-16 Cat 1 series champion, right? Like, that's something you'll have forever as an accolade. So I think that these kids are probably pretty focused. And, to move up, I don't know that they need to move up for competition, right? Like, it's not like if they were dominating their class, they could move up to say, I need to race amongst faster racers. Alex, Nick, Cash, Luke, Cohen, Chris Liebig, and I could go down and probably read another 6 names. Those kids are so close in time and so competitive and so fast that any one of them could turn a top 10 pro time at any moment. So beating their own group really means something this year, right? Like, they could move to the pro class and post a better result with a time than it might have given them in the 15-16 class. That's nuts.
Yep, I know. It's incredible. And, we're seeing something similar with the girls too. Do you want to talk about the girls categories?
Yeah, I think, well, first, let's just give a quick shout out to in the 13-14 Cat 1 boys, I think that we would be remiss to not mention. Sorry, I struggle with his first name, but Bosvert Ryo, is that how
Yeah,
you say his name?
Ryo, yeah.
Back-to-back wins, right? Like that's pretty sick. Back-to-back wins in a very competitive category and laying down just heat on the track. So we don't need to go too deep into that, but it's a good points race in that category. We'll talk more about that one in the pre-show coming into Big Bear.
Absolutely.
So let's jump over to the women's class.
The Cat 1 girls, 17 to 18-year-old Cat 1 girls. Mixed bag of riders here. We had 50% from the US, 50% of the class was from Canada. And, again, some strong performances and some consistent performances coming from some of these young athletes.
100%, and we jump back and forth between points race and results in the last race here, which I think is fun. This is cool. Like we haven't gotten to do this in years. It's always just been talk about a race. So I'm looking at the points chase, a tie for second. Sarah Ligman also back-to-back wins, credit where credit is due. She could be walking away with this, but there's 2 races left. And, Charlie Bernard and Addison Buckenberger, both with 88 points, right in the chase. I think that the competition in that group is pretty stiff, and I think that the results of Big Bear are going to be absolutely definitive. Like it might be the type of thing where it won't be mathematically impossible to win after Big Bear, but if Sarah puts down another win, like that's going to definitely make it harder.
Absolutely.
All right, so when we look at the 17-18 women's points chase, that the tie for second, that's one thing. But then looking at the race on the day, Sarah Ligman had a pretty dominating win. I think that she is, in a pretty powerful position within that class. Those other racers have some time to make up on her. It's a good spot to be, but that just means the target's on your back, right? So we'll see where that goes.
She'll be going into the third round with a really good head, I think, a really good headspace, coming in with 2 wins and, a win that actually was 6 seconds ahead of second on the second round. I think she's going to come in with a pretty strong mindset. And we all know that when you're racing with a healthy, unobstructed mindset, and you have the confidence that you become hard to deal with for anyone that's trying to compete. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this season unfolds for her, but I wouldn't be surprised if she went perfect for the season, but you just never know.
Yeah. It would be interesting to have a perfect, there's a couple of these amateur categories where we could see perfect seasons. I noticed that. But it's a good transition over to the other category we wanted to hit here was the 15-16 women's category, which had very close racing. When you look at the times, 241, 242, 243, all in the top 3. So a very tight race. And to me, as I've always said, like that's more important than anything. Regardless of what the time is, the tightness of the pack is what's most important. That no one's walking away with it, and that's what we're seeing. And that's I'll say this too. Like for years, I've been as the U.S. Open, we've been really pushing the women's racing. We've been paying these big prize purses, and the number one thing we always want to see, if we're doing this, is more women in the same bracket racing each other. And now we're seeing it down into the 15-16 group, and it takes time, right? Like it takes time to develop these categories, but this is 15-16. By the time, these girls are in their 20s, this group is probably going to triple in size and the times are going to get even tighter. So I think this is a really good harbinger of like what's coming in women's racing. I think that when you look at the points, I'd say Kaylee Stewart's in a really strong position right now, but I don't know that she can't rest. That's for sure. I mean, she has a decent lead, but that could be eroded pretty quickly with either a bad race or a no-show from her. And if she has a DNF or a no-show, Mary McLaren and her will be right there as long as Mary shows up at Big Bear. So good, another good category to watch. It'll be fun to talk about in the corral. And, this has me thinking, might need to be finding budget to produce a show about the 15 and 16-year-olds too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you, it'd definitely be a good watch. You just mentioned the times of the top 3 ladies in this 15-16 category, and they'd have all been on the podium in the pro women's category, all 3 of them. So I think Raina Logar, who rounded out the top 3 with a 243.84, was literally 2/100ths of a second behind Shelley, who was
Unreal.
on the podium in the
Unreal. That's
the
awesome.
women's pro category. So, we talked a little bit about this last time.
Let's
like,
go.
Good gosh, like these kids are on fire, and it just again, like it's one of the reasons that I get so fired up and so passionate to help you with this whole thing, because the platform that is being created for these riders and the level of talent and how tight it is, like they're all going to go home when you're riding a course like that. There was a lot going on that course, and when you're riding a course like that and you go home with less than a second separating you from first, second, or third place, you get hungry. And then you think about all those moments in your race run where you're like, well, I didn't pedal here. I consciously knew that I should have, but I needed to save a little bit for the finish line sprint. You start thinking about those things, and then those become those sort of the moments in the gym where you're like, I can't do one more rep. And then you're like, no, I lost by less than a second, and you somehow find a strength to do 5,
So true.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start seeing the same like disruption in the pro women's field when these riders start graduating into the pro ranks. It's cool.
It's so good. And just to make a funny comparison, like the 15-16 Cat 1 girls, it's not much different than when you talk about Max Abrams versus Jack Sononi in the 17-18, Cat 1 men, which is damn near pro class. So I think what's being built is really cool. So I think, that's good, like conversation. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to wrap a little deeper on some of these categories. There's amazing points battles out in the 2-3s as well. And the Cat 2-3s, there's so much good stuff going on. I wish we had time to highlight everybody, but it's so difficult. Just want to say, make sure everybody checks out the 17-18 juniors coverage that'll be dropping next week. Get a chance to see that battle between Max and Jack, which is, in my opinion, probably, like I said, the best race of the week. So I think, Lars, let's hit the SR Sun Tour Hole Shot Award, which is, I'm just going to go out and say it. I was almost right. And I'm holding my ground. I think that we are going to see a Cat 1 15-16 kid take the whole shot. And my man Cash Shalene, so damn close, held on to that thing so deep into the men's pro field. Dante ultimately took it away from him in the end. Well, I guess there was, I think, 2 riders in between held it for a few minutes, but the race within a race that's created, a lot of people doubted that it would be worthwhile in mountain biking to do that. But I mean, we couldn't stop talking about Cash's first split during those finals, which is, really just cool. Like, that's just a really cool thing, how else would you insert a fast 15-16-year-old's name into a pro final, right?
Absolutely. It was also cool to see, this is, we're 2 rounds in, but both rounds, the winner of the overall weekend, top to bottom, was not the winner of the SR Sun Tour Hole Shot Award. So, we are starting to see sort of a trend that you don't always look at, and it's kind of like fastest to the first split. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out after, a few more events transpire, and you get to start to see trends and clusters and patterns of, who comes out swinging and who tends to wind up their run. We heard Asa rather talking about, I think you were kind of teasing them a little bit about not having the fastest first split, not winning the SR Sun Tour Hole Shot Award. And he won with a healthy margin. And he made the comment, it's not common. It takes me a little while to wind up my run, And so you definitely have different riding styles that the Hole Shot Award will favor. So it's pretty cool to just see how it all unfolds. And it's fun having just one more thing to talk about and one more sort of prideful moment that riders can go home and reach towards.
Yeah, and one more check they can cash too, right?
That's
Like,
it.
shout out SR Suntour. Like that company has gone from being, not present, if you will, in downhill racing to being like, a backbone of this brand new North American series. It's commitment. The fact that they want to put that money in athletes' hands is really cool. A lot of respect to them and a lot of respect to the athletes going for that. So that's pretty cool. I think that, we're hitting pretty deep. We're like at over an hour in this thing now.
Yeah.
So if you know me, I'll talk. So I think that, the things I want to just mention at the end is please go check out our YouTube coverage. Yesterday we dropped the full show that the Gravity Cooperative made for us. It's an amazing show. Grizz and Will and Lars on the mic. Just, you guys are crushing it. Like, the compliments we're getting on the coverage, it just makes us all want to work harder. So please go check that out and definitely give us a subscribe because, the bigger we can get that channel, the more it'll reach and the more we can bring partners in and pay bigger prize purses to these athletes. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, when people ask how they can help, subscribe, like, share, it'll put money in athletes' hands. With that, the junior race is going to drop next week, I think, is when we're going to be able to do that. Again, we have like a skeleton crew. It's so much work to get these things produced. If anyone ever saw behind the curtain, they would probably be scared at the hours that Mangler and his crew put in. They may say that those people, that's unhealthy, but we appreciate it. The product is great. And the juniors coverage is going to come out, I think, it's going to be, like you said, electric. It's going to be really cool. Other bits of business, Big Bear registration. We'll be opening that up next month. A few little bits of logistics we need to get through still. In the meantime, we're on a little bit of break here. We have national champs coming up at Ride Rock Creek at the end of July, beginning of August. That's a big one. I've signed on to help USA Cycling with that. We've been making some big changes. The schedule is going to change. Nico and his crew changed up the track a little. It's going to be Rock Creek. It's going to be awesome. I'm very excited about that one. You have all the regional series, whether it's Northwest Cup, Rockies, Eastern States Cup, Downhill Southeast, and then the brand new one that's coming out next week, Swinging Hard, Southwest Downhill. Steve Walton's new series that's coming out. I'll be going out to that event to check it out and give a hand as best I can. But there's a lot going on. I feel like it's just an amazing time in downhill in the U.S. and couldn't be happier to be part of it.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier to be a part of this whole thing as well. It's been amazing. And I guess with that, we'll just say, folks, thanks for tuning in. Everything Clay just said, just do it, and then life will be good. So, Clay, thank you for all that you do and your entire family, the entire crew, and the Gravity Cooperative team, just unbelievable. So looking forward to seeing everyone in person in August at Big Bear for round 3. And we'll be, I'm sure, reaching out with our pre-race podcast in the coming months.
Absolutely.
We'll see you then.
Thank you, everyone.